Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is my first episode of my podcast. I am very excited. I'm excited because we are talking about one of my least exciting subjects, money today, but we're talking about it with my best friend who also happens to be a finance guru. So he's going to be joining us in just a little bit, but I wanted to first talk about why am I doing this whole podcast anyway? And I kind of want to start it with my feelings of guilt. Now, are you guys feeling guilty ever? Like, I'm not doing enough in life, or I wish I was more entrepreneurial and I'm just so lazy. Well, I want to talk to you about how I found a little cure for guilt this week on my discovery of trying to understand what lazypreneurship means. So, I'm going to discuss today my cure for guilt. This week, we're going to talk about how to change the relationship with money, which I definitely need to do. And we're also going to be defining being a lazypreneur. So I'm Alize. If you don't know me, I'm Alize Presents. I'm an Adobe Live presenter and educator, but I also teach creatives how to feel more confident when they're doing their virtual presentations. All right. So let's talk about my little journey. It actually all started with Oz when I invited him onto this show. And he was like, "What is a lazypreneur? You should define that." And I'm like, "Oh yeah. What does that mean?" For me, I was just like, "Yeah, I'm a entrepreneur, but I'm a bit lazy, but let me dig deeper into that." And so of course I did it in the laziest way possible. I researched on Google. So I looked on Google, I'm like, lazypreneur, what's out there already with that? And I found a social media Instagram channel and they had two posts from like 3 years ago. I was like, oh, they were too lazy, I guess. Then I go on a YouTube channel. I see that there's one video with 2 views. I was like, oh, too lazy. And then I discovered this podcast. It's called Lazypreneur. They have 3 episodes. Good for them from 2019, but they stopped there. And the first episode, it says defining lazypreneur. And I was like, ooh, jackpot. Let's see what that's about. And this is while listening to this lazypreneur definition, I also found my cure to guilt. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But let me show you this definition of lazypreneur from Mia Elise, who runs Lazypreneur Podcast, 3 episodes from 2019. Lazypreneur understands who they are and how they work best, so they can align their schedules and business in how they work best. See, I was so lazy, I spelled that wrong. I spelled word instead of work. There we go. Lazypreneurs take powerful, positive action within the time that works best for them and does not feel guilty about stopping when it feels like they're pushing a boulder up a hill. A lazypreneur does not burn out because they know thyself. And I was just thinking to myself, like, know thyself before you wreck yourself. No, 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 know yourself before you wreck yourself. That was like what was playing in my head. And so I was like, okay, I got to get to know myself. And actually, in this episode, she talks about how you can learn more about yourself and feel less guilty. And it was through this it's called the Colby assessment, and it's a 32 questionnaire, and it was $55. I was like, $55, is it worth it? And it was. It really was. I found out that my biggest strengths are that I should be spending most of my time ideating and fact finding and less time implementing and organizing. And I was like, thank gosh, because I'm already doing that. I just feel really guilty about the fact that I don't like organizing and I don't like planning. And in fact, because I got this relief, I didn't feel guilty today about creating the outline for this podcast an hour or two before it started. I didn't feel guilty. I was like, it literally said in my assessment, do things last minute. I was like, oh, you felt such a relief. So this is Colby assessment, Kolbe. And the Kolbe assessment finds your specific or shows you your specific instinctive ways that you take action that helps you strive. So it's really about knowing your strengths and being like, you don't have to be all perfect. You can kind of feel less guilty about the things you're not as good at. So for me, what I discovered what being a lazypreneur is that it's not about trying to do nothing and expecting big results, right? I'm on planet Earth here, but it's about strategic shortcuts for me in order to maximize my energy. It also for me recently means saying no to things. So just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. In essence, it's kind of something we've heard time and again over and over, which is we should be working smarter, not harder. But this really kind of brought it home for me, this assessment. And I actually messaged the woman who did this Lazypreneur podcast. I'm wondering if I can get her on a future podcast and be like, girl, what happened? Why'd you stop your podcast? Were you too lazy or did something happen? It was a really good first episode. I'm literally almost regurgitating the information she put into this episode. So I'm very curious. We'll see if she'll come on with me and what we learned from that. Now, let's transition to talk a little bit more about my least favorite subject in the entire world, money, and how I want to reframe my mindset with money so I can feel less guilty and make money fit my specific lifestyle and my strengths as well. So that's kind of like I'm trying to fit everything into what I do naturally good at, like money, finance. Oh, is that the same thing? um, Entrepreneurship, friendship. How can I fit it to kind of what are my personal strengths? That's kind of been like a little thought of mine. All right, so let's bring in Oz, who is a finance guru and also happens to be my friend. So I'm like, let me just take advantage of my friend, bring him on, ask him for him to help me out a bit. So let's bring on Oz. Yay!
Hello.
So,
hey, Lazy, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So before I want you to just like let people know what you do, but before that, I want to like show you this cute little like this little graphic I made for you.
I love that.
You on top of all this money, helping me with monies. All right. So yeah, tell us about what you do.
So by day, I'm a financial designer. That means I'm also a UX designer, content designer for a financial company. So I think about this stuff a lot. By night, I write about finances. I write a weekly newsletter on ozchen.com. And I also post things to my new Instagram handle, Feel Finance. I love helping people think about money problems, solve them, and like feel more empowered and a sense of ease around money and finances. So really glad to be here.
Yay. I love this. Okay. So I wanted to first tell you like how I feel about money, which you probably already guessed from what you just heard, which is I feel stress because as I now know about myself, I'm not good with organizing. I'm not good with planning. And for me, what money feels like is a lot of organizing and planning and filling out forms. I don't know why that comes to mind, and doing things like that are not my strong suits. So I'd love to kind of get your perspective on this when you talk to people or that might be in my similar situation.
Yeah, I actually love to revisit your definition of lazypreneur because I love that definition. And, I want to make this talk very relevant to the lazypreneur around the world. So there's a term called lifestyle entrepreneurship, which is very similar. And it's different from like the traditional entrepreneurship that we might think of, which is you got to create a crazy Silicon Valley style startup and get millions in funding and do pitch decks and all that, right? Lifestyle entrepreneurship is more about designing your lifestyle and how do you create streams of income or a business that fits that lifestyle. So have you ever seen that meme that's like I didn't want to work a 9 to 5. So I started my business instead. Now I work 24/7.
Yeah.
Right? That's that,
Yes.
a lot of people glamorize and glorify like a certain type of entrepreneurship, and then to realize actually this isn't what I want. Like this isn't the lifestyle I'm trying to build here. And why I'm leading with this definition of lifestyle entrepreneurship is that first of all, it's to make money, but second is to design your life. And it's to make money in a way that feels good to you, right? And how it fits into your lifestyle. So if making money doesn't look like working 24/7, or maybe it looks like, hey, you got to take every Friday off, or you wake up, without an alarm, that's great. And I think it's really important to like define those things.
Do you think it's like, okay, I should come up with 3 to 5 things about what being an entrepreneur, a lazypreneur means for me? Like, what are things that I ultimately want? Like, okay, I don't want to work Friday through Sunday. I want to be off at 3 p.m. I want to be able to travel every few months. Do you think like it's important to kind of list some things and then maybe to like limit that list?
I think that's a really good idea, which is, what do I want out of this experience, right? Because there's a common uh, piece of business wisdom, which is you don't want to always be working in your business. You want to be working like on it, right? Like
Mm.
working in your business is like, oh, I'm trading all my time for money. I'm really grinding it out. But at a certain point in time, it probably really suits the lazypreneur lifestyle to be like, I've set up some systems, I have some help and some automation, whatever have you, where things are working for me, where I have more access to time and freedom because I've like took the upfront time and cost to like set up these things, and now I could like coast a little bit or not have such a stressed existence.
Yeah, I think like that's sort of where I'm struggling, which is how do I still make money when I'm not working myself? And I literally just started dabbling with selling a workshop where I'm able to make passive income. So I had my first taste of passive income, and it's just like a couple $1,000s, right? But what I'm
That's
wondering
great.
then is like, well, okay, I'm like, how do I do more of that? And I'm always thinking more about like my business and how I could be making more from my business. Is that the right approach? Or do you think I should be like thinking of other ways that I can be bringing in more passive income so that I'm less stressed about having to make that money on my own through these passive income sources and feeling stress about the time frame of that?
Yeah. So I heard maybe a few questions in there, which is like
Maybe
how
7.
like how do I think about passive income? And also like how do I think about how my personality and ways of working like fits into like what I want to create? And
You heard
so
right. You heard right. You just said
okay.
it better.
I'm just gonna also like start with a distinction again between the lifestyle startup and the startup. Like I think the lifestyle startup is like I want to change my life. And of course, you want to create a good product or experiences as part of, earning money to change your life. But it's like lifestyle entrepreneurship. I want to change my life. Uh, Traditional startup is I want to change the world. And I think for that there's no morality to it. There not one is better, right? You could of course end up changing the world by changing your life and pursuing a lifestyle entrepreneurship path. And but I think it just really helps to clarify that up front of like, okay, how do I want to change my life, right? And I think exactly what you did, which is at the top of the podcast, talking about the Colby assessment, right? You're thinking about how I want to change like my ways of working to really benefit like how I show up creatively, and it actually feels much better, right? You're more productive, you're probably creating better experiences and products, and I think like that's a lesson I took away from this podcast already, which is like, hey, there's this like Colby assessment that I could take to figure out, for my next entrepreneurial ventures, what kind of fits my life and how I show up and create. um, as compared to like the startups of like, I want to change the world. Like these are people who have an itch that they have to scratch, like something they see in the world that they just have to fix. So I feel like they're a little bit more externally oriented. And, these are some of like the crazy founder stories that you hear, right? People who started Tesla and whatever. And I feel like that's such like of like the standard of the story of entrepreneurship story that we hear, that it's actually really good to hear about other stories, like, on this podcast, which we'll explore, right? Which is, hey, how did this, there's stories of like parents who ended up like blogging and creating like a really cool brand and lifestyle for them based off of like affiliate income or passive income, or, someone who, like me, kind of transitioned a little bit more into investing, um, as a way to build passive income. There's just like so many different streams. So I know I've rambled a little bit, but coming back to your question of like, how do I think through creating different streams of income? I think it's just the awareness that there's different streams of income in the first place. That's really exciting. And so just like you did an audit with yourself with the Colby assessment, I think it's really cool to go through an audit of like all the ways that you want to make money, right? Which is like, hey, does this look like making a course? Does this look like doing workshops? Because I love that interactive part. Does this look like involving myself with investing a little bit more, which feels different from building a business, but it's still making money. Like the point is still making passive income, and just like really document, like have a fun time, like writing out a whole list of things of how do I want to make money, and like by seeing that on a piece of paper, I think the next exercise would be like, what's the trade-off here of my time and energy? Do I like feel like I'm really gravitating towards these passive income streams? Does this one feel boring? And I'll just kind of pause there.
I wonder, like,
How does
okay,
that
when you
land?
talk about investing, I'm like, oh, that does sound boring. But it's also probably because I don't really know what is that ticket to entry, or what is the time and effort that I would need to expend in order to see the most return on that investment in time. So when I think about being strategic and maximizing my energy more towards the things that I'm naturally good at and naturally like, it's like, should I even dabble with that? And how much of my mental energy should I be spending on even just understanding what investing is, in order to see if like the way I'm viewing it right now is biased because I'm just ignorant, or, I'm kind of just wondering more about, like, again, that energy aspect, and if I should be spending any towards that investing piece.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think investing is like even more relevant for lifestyle entrepreneurs, because you're kind of like building your life a la carte and, putting money as a piece into it. So what that means is, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you're trying to make money and enjoy your time while doing it, or hopefully not be too stressed out. So what investing allows you to do, there is a initial setup cost of like knowledge, of like getting comfortable with it, but it could become passive and automatic, something in the background, right? So here's like my value proposition. Here's like my persuasive argument for LazyPreneur's to think more about investing, which is, you have a product or service that you're going to put out in the world to make some money, right? And let's say that it does well, and you end up having an excess amount of money, right? You have more savings. It's like, where do you want those savings to go? And that extra cash, if it could just make more money for you, it actually promotes and supports your whole lazypreneur journey, right? So even though it feels kind of individual, like, hey, I'm taking this bucket of cash that's like is left over after like I made all these sales and after I paid my vendors and help, like, now what I do with all this cash, right? Well, it's kind of exciting that some of this cash can just keep working in the background for you, that keeps basically supporting your life. Yeah.
Okay, so when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Homegirl don't have an extra bucket of cash. Homegirl spends that cash when she got that extra cash. Like, oh, I'm going on vacation. I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to buy myself. I have a shopping addiction as well, right? So when I think about like extra money, maybe that's where the challenge is for me, because people who have extra money, they're like, oh, this is a problem. What do I do with extra money? For me, I think, how can I spend this or reinvest this in my business with, okay, like there are so many areas being a solo business person that I can expand on. Like, okay, my YouTube titles aren't good. I want to hire someone to help me with those. There's someone I can hire with writing, helping me with my bio. I'm always thinking of like, there's hundreds of little things I could be doing that I could be
Mhm.
reinvesting into my business. And that's my only frame of investment is like, okay, well, I'll just invest more in my own business. And I guess, yeah, that's my challenge with thinking about other ways of investing. Is because I don't got that extra
Yeah.
cash. Like, that's not a problem. I got 99 problems, but having extra cash ain't one.
I think reinvesting your business is great. And I'll share like a fun example about Elon Musk. And then also like, I'll kind of just start with the basics of when you reinvest into your business, a lot of the things that you said are kind of active, right? Okay, so I'm gonna hire someone else. Well, I'm gonna have to maybe train that person, or I'm gonna have to learn a new piece of software. Hopefully, some of those investments go into things that automate some things for you as well. But you could think of investing as like, oh, I'm putting some of this money into something that I don't really have to do any work for, and it's just, for example, you find a good investment and it's giving you 10% back a year. It's like, I didn't have to do anything. At the end of 1 year, it's like, oh, hey, like if I had $1,000, now it's $1,100. That extra $100 is kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't have to do any training of anyone or whatever. It's passive. Of course, investing can be active as well, which I typically guide my audience away from. And there's something about kind of funding your life as like a LazyPreneur that you could separate into a passive um, investment bucket that's kind of like doing work for you in the background. So it's not like a binary like, hey, put all your money in your business or investing. It could be a mix, right?
Okay, I love this. And I like where you're coming at it. And I got a little excited. But now here is, of course, the question. What is the laziest, most strategic shortcut I can take to starting investing with maximizing my energy? So, lowest amount that I can do to maximize my results as a first-time investor. What could I do to shortcut?
You could take my money coaching group course. um,
Great
just,
natural
just,
play for
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, so in my group coaching, what at first I could give you the simple answer, but it's gonna maybe like sound too technical or boring because it's actually very simple. And I'll just say like the robotic version first, which is I will teach you to put your money in an index fund, and you'll know which one to choose. And this one, on average, will return you between 8 to 10% on your money every year. And I could write it all out on one sheet of paper. And if someone knew what I was talking about, they'll be like, shoot, thanks, Oz. I'm going to go on Robinhood, M1 Finance, Vanguard, whatever I use as my investment account. I'll do this. And I just drip in some money, maybe 10% of my paycheck, maybe 5%, whatever you can do. And it's just going to automatically be investing and growing my money pie over time. Right. So that's like the short answer. But why I said I started with like, well, why do I do money coaching? The first 2 sessions are just to help people wrap their minds around investing. Like, what are all the ways around investing that
Okay, so this is where I
kind
want a
of appeal
shortcut
to you?
though. I don't want to do any of that. When you were talking about, I'm like, oh, no, I don't have 2 hours. What you first said, I was like, yes, shortcut. Tell me which index. Tell me which one to, don't even tell me Robinhood one. And I trust you. Tell me which one to pick, how much I should put, and I'll do it. That's my shortcut. I don't want to do anything else. Can we do that?
Yes, I could say that right now, and I always have to say not financial advice, just
Okay.
just as part of
This
it,
is
just for
disclaimer. This
demonstration
homeboy works at Credit
purposes.
Karma. He knows you gotta, tick those legal boxes. So if
Yeah,
I'm writing it down. I'm an eager student. Tell me like couple the steps and or you can
right.
email it to me later, but shortcut.
Here's something bullet point that someone can do. Go to Robinhood or your investment app, and then type in the search bar VOO, which is a ticker for basically the Vanguard S&P 500 index. I talk about index funds a lot, and I explain that in my course. And you set a recurring investment on that. And then there's a drop down that says, do you want to invest in this weekly, monthly? I personally like to invest weekly. And you put in whatever amount of money on that recurring schedule that is an unmissable amount or a forgettable amount. This part is psychologically important. When I say unmissable amount, it means like when you look at the things that you shop for, and sometimes you're like, I bought that, I forgot about that. Maybe it was groceries, maybe it was eating out, maybe it was Starbucks, right? Approximate around that amount of money where you're like, I'm not gonna miss it. I'm not gonna, give myself a heart attack, if I see the markets go up and down, right? It's just like, yeah, I have this extra money. So there's a little bit of art and science to it, right?
Yeah.
Invest that amount, and then since it's on a recurring schedule, it's like pulling out of your bank account into Robinhood and just buying that thing for you. Long story short, that the story you could tell yourself is, without having to do anything, I am passively investing in the top 500 best American companies in the world. And I believe in the innovation and performance that's going to have for me. So I'm going to sit back and relax. And I could count on statistics that over time, 5 years from now, on average, it returns 8 to 10% a year. So those are literally the bullet point steps that, I help people get to. And sometimes it feels like a long journey because they'll ask me questions like, what is VOO? What's an index fund? Why do I do it on a recurring schedule? That there's all these supporting questions, but here's the summary of like one really simple strategy.
I love that you brought this in like 2 minutes, which is perfect because have 2 minutes left. You brought this down in 2 minutes. You made this super clean and clear for me that I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Like, sure, I'll mess with that. $100, sure, right? And I like that you put it in like the terminology and the simplicity of it. That I actually do feel better, and maybe I am going to start that like right now because I think like, okay, that could maybe take me 10 minutes to 10, 20 minutes to do set up?
Yeah. If you already have a Robinhood account, they make it devilishly easy, for better or worse, to buy stocks and index funds. Yeah.
Okay. Love this. Okay. So you're and you have a little code for people for Robinhood, right? Like
I do.
you give a code, get a code. Okay, we'll put that in the comments. So the what we're searching for is VOO, and what else? What is that all I have to search? VOO?
That's what my class is about. So sometimes people are like, really, just like one fund, just like S&P 500 index, is that enough? And so the long and short of it is, it's probably enough for most people, especially younger first-time investors. But there's this whole world of kind of like building your portfolio, which is, there's varying levels of complexity. I would say this, which is the finance world and fitness world are very, very similar. Where in the fitness world, it's like eat healthier and move more, right? That's the basis of like how to get more fit. In finance, it's very much passively invest in the stock market over time. But because there's so much money to be gained, you have like fad diets like 6-pack abs and P90X, and this is the new secret, right? You'll also find that in the financial world, which is like this is my one secret to trading options and the super secret to crypto. And so you have to really watch out for that as a first-time investor and really think, okay, what is this simple, easy, passive thing that works? And this is what I lead with, which is what I shared in this podcast.
Love it. Love that example. You're bringing a lot of things and helping me especially when you talk about fitness, like that's easier for my brain to comprehend as well. Hey. And it helps make it just like that much more like more accessible is the word. And I think kind of just what you shared today makes me feel like investing is more accessible. And I love your comparison with this small upfront time and effort. It's like it's the gateway drug to investing. You do this, you see how it goes over time, and maybe you kind of get into it. You want to do a little more. You want to get into it. So like right, that makes it even more accessible for me to understand. So I think like I really love how you broke it down, and I really appreciate you like working with me through all my like, no, let's shortcut it shortcut. Cause you know, we have different types of people, and that's me with investing. And I think like, I really appreciate you working with me and where my brain kind of short circuits. So,
yeah. And if I were to leave the audience with one question, which is simple and doesn't have to be a sophisticated investing thing, that question is simply, how do I make my money work more for me? How do I earn more money on my money? And then, you know, let that question marinate, and you're going to start finding solutions. You're going to start kind of becoming curiouser and curiouser around this.
Yeah. Plant that seed. Okay. Yeah. Love this. Okay, great. So, I want to first, before we end, I want to talk about the cadence. This is going to be, my podcast will be every 3 weeks, this same time at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Fridays. And next time we're going to talk about, did I invest? Did I make any money? Did it go up or down? How do I feel about money? So I'm going to take Oz's advice. I'm going to implement it, and I'm going to talk about what it's like to have this new passive income stream. It's 3 weeks. We'll see what happens. And then we're also, will potentially see what happens with Mia when I reach out to her, the LazyPreneur, and see if she responds back to me. We'll see. Oz, where can people find you and connect with you and learn from you?
So I'm really easy to find online. My name, Oz Chen. That's just everywhere. So ozchen.com. You'll find my blog where I talk about finances and money and mind management around money. And I send out a weekly newsletter. So ozchen.com/newsletter. Sign up and I will send you info that'll help you live a rich life.
Yes. And I definitely recommend doing it because I've listened. I've watched. No, I have not. I've not listened and I've not watched is what I should say. I've not listened. I've not watched. I've read Oz's work, and he is such an amazing writer and really makes things much easier to understand when I choose to read them. Because I told you, when I see money, I'm like, but such a great writer, and I highly recommend him breaking down hard concepts for you, and like he did for me today. All right. Well, much love. I love you. Isn't that a funny way to end a podcast?
I love you, Elise. Thank you for being my friend who always brings the spunk.
Thank you for bringing the guy who always brings the financial funk. All right. On that note,
okay.